Imhotep, and I'm your storyteller for the next few minutes. I'm so happy to have another opportunity to share stories with all of my people in Elbert County and wherever this video may be seen. My name is Akbar, and like I say, this is my second time sharing stories with the people of Elbert County. Before I continue, I'd like to thank Ms. Jan Meadows for inviting me to tell stories for you. Today I have some stories, I think one original stories and 3 stories that I love, 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 love. People often ask me, what's my favorite story? And I often hesitate because anything I put on my list is a favorite. But I must admit, this little story right here, called The Doc, may be one of my all-time favorite stories. And there's a whole story about how this book came into my life, but I won't tell you that today. I'll just tell the story. In an art class, a little girl named Vashti, when the class ended, her page was absolutely blank. The art teacher looked at her blank page, picked it up, and said, "Ooh, a polar bear trapped in a snowstorm." Vashti said, "Ha ha, funny. I can't draw." The teacher said, "Oh, yes, you can. Draw, make a dot." And she said, "Anybody can make a dot." So she took her drawing pen and she made a dot on the page. And the art teacher said, "Sign it for me." She said, "What? Sign it. I want you to sign your work." She said, "I can't draw, but I can sign my name." And she signed her name on the sheet of paper that only had a dot. When she went to class the next day, she was really surprised because the art teacher had taken that sheet of paper with only a dot and put it in a pretty gold frame. Vashti looked at that framed dot and said, "I can make a dot better than that." And so she opened up her box of art supplies and she started making dots. She made a black dot, a green dot, a blue dot. She put colors together and made orange and purple and round dots. She made little dots. She made big dots. She made all kinds of dots. She made one dot without making a dot by painting around a big open space. Now, when the art exhibit was put up, she was really, really surprised because all of her dots had been framed and put on display. Now, there was a fellow student at that art exhibit looking at everything she had done. And finally, her classmate went up to her and said, "You're a great artist." And Vashti looked at him and smiled and said, "I bet you are too." He said, "No, I'm not. I can't draw a straight line." Vashti got a sheet of paper and said, "Now, draw me a line." And the nervous little boy got his pen and made a jagged line. Vashti said, "Now sign it for me." And he signed it. And believe it or not, our story ends there. But at the end of the story, the author of the story thanks her 4th grade teacher for inspiring her and encouraging her to make her mark in life. And that's why I love this story so much. It's about encouragement. And I say to all of you out there listening, I challenge and encourage you to give it your best. Don't stop short of the goal. Push yourself because you too, each and every one of you, can make a mark on the world. That's the story from this book. This, I want to tell you, is a real life story. In April, I spoke to one of my friends she's an actress, a storyteller, a go-getter. And she had had an accident on her bus where she fell and hit her head and had a concussion. Now she was out of the hospital and everything, but the concussion made her lose focus. So when we talked in April, she said to me, Akbar, I enjoyed my students on the bus so much. I talked to them and I gave them power thoughts. And I want to put my power thoughts in a book. And I said, go ahead, girl, and write your book. And she said, I can't write the book because every time I start writing, I lose focus and I can't get anything on paper. And I said to my friend, I said, write one page at a time. Actually, I put it less than that. I said, write one thought at a time, and then write one page at a time, and you're going to get your book. And I'm going to call you back to follow up to see where you are. Now, that was like mid-April when we had that conversation. I called her back in May. She said, Akbar, I haven't been able to get started yet. I said, I'm going to call you until you get started, until you do that book. I called her one more time in June, and she said, well, I think I got a page. So we started in April. I called her one time in May. She said she didn't have anything. I called her again in June. She said, I think I got a page. In August, I got a text, and the text had my friend holding this book saying, I'm an author. And all I could do was smile. And I thought about this book to die. So on behalf of my dear friend Sylvia, I want to say, you can do it, okay? Thank you very much. Stories come and stories go. The next story I want to tell you is a wonderful little story called The End at the End of the Rainbow. And I'm going to pick this book up for a quarter. I know I got it. I got it from the Village, Value Village, a book that someone had given Value Village to sell. And I brought it home, and it laid around for about 6 months or more. And finally, I picked it up and read it at the end of the rainbow. And the story, believe it or not, is about a fox and a badger. Now, I've heard of the Wisconsin Badger, that's a football team in the Big Ten, but I didn't know what a badger was. But the pictures that I've seen, I thought maybe it was a cousin of the beaver. Well, it turns out they're not related to beavers, but they are related to weasels and wolverines. So this story takes place between a fox and a badger. After a big rain, there was a beautiful rainbow across the sky. And the fox and badger sat talking, wondering what was at the end of the rainbow. They thought it may be gold and silvers and diamonds or precious rubies. So they made a decision to go to the end of the rainbow to find that treasure. So they left home on their way to find the treasure at the end of the rainbow. And on their way to the end of the rainbow, they met a squirrel. And the squirrel had a pile of acorns. And the squirrel said, where are you two going? They said, we're going to the end of the rainbow to find our treasure. And the squirrel said, I have my treasure right here. The fox and the badger said, that's no treasure. Those are just acorns. She said, this is my food for the winter. So it's a treasure for me. And the fox and the badger said, You let that be your treasure. We're going to the end of the rainbow to find a real treasure. So they ran on, and they came across a duck out by a little pond. And the duck was saying, "Where are you, little one? Where are you? Where are you, little one?" And the fox and the badger came upon the duck, and they said, "What are you looking for?" She said, "I'm looking for my treasure." They said, "We are too." "Oh, well, where's your treasure?" The fox and the badger said, "We're going to the end of the rainbow. That's where we'll find our treasure." The duck said, "I don't have to go to the end of the rainbow because look, there's my little treasure there." And it was a little duckling, her son. They said, "Hey, that's no treasure. We're going to find a real treasure." The duck said, "Anything you love can be a treasure." "Oh, okay, we're going to go get a real treasure." And so they left the duck and they ran up a hill. And at the top of that hill was an old rabbit. And the rabbit was sitting there. And the rabbit said, "Where are you two going so fast?" They said, "We're going to find our treasure." The rabbit said, "Well, I don't have to go anywhere to find my treasure. My treasure is right here." They said, "What?" "My memories, the things that I've done, my experiences, those are my treasures." The fox and the badger said, "That's not a real treasure. We're going to go find a real treasure, some gold, diamonds, rubies, silver." And they ran, going towards the end of the rainbow. Well, wouldn't you know, it started raining. And when it started raining, the rainbow disappeared. And they sat under a tree out of the rain. And the badger and the fox looked at each other and they said, "What is a treasure?" The squirrel had its treasure and it was just as food for the winter. The duck has her treasure and it was something or somebody that she loved. And the rabbit had his treasure and it was just his memory. Do we have to go to the end of the rainbow to find a treasure? They looked at each other. And the badger said to the fox, "You are my treasure." And the fox said to the badger, "You are my treasure." And they began to celebrate because they had found their treasures and didn't have to go to the end of the rainbow. And they started dancing. And while they were dancing, it stopped raining. A rainbow came out, but they didn't see it because they had turned around to go back home because they had found their rainbow. They had found their treasure, and they didn't have to go to the end of the rainbow. Thank you. At the end of the rainbow. And my next story is called How Bird Terrapin Learned to Fly. It features a terrapin, which is like first cousin to the turtle and the tortoise, and it features a buzzard, which I would say first or second cousin to the vulture. And the story says that whenever buzzard would go visit terrapin, terrapin would say, "Hey buzzard, when you gonna show me how to fly? When you gonna give me some flying lessons?" And buzzard said, "What? You can't fly? You ain't got no wings, so you can't fly." He said, "You my friend, you got wings, so you can show me how to fly." "All right, I'm gonna give you some flying lessons." Now what Buzzard would do, he'd go over to Terrapin's house, he'd get Terrapin on his back, and he'd go flying around to let Terrapin see how it felt like to be flying. Now we all know that feeling like you're flying, not the same as actually flying. But after the last day, when Buzzard brought Terrapin home, Terrapin said, okay, Buzzard, when you come by tomorrow, I want you to take me up and let me go so I can fly all by myself. What? I'm going to fly solo. What? Okay, I'll be over here first thing in the morning. Now that next morning, when Buster went to Terrapin's house, Terrapin was ready. He had on a little leather jacket, had a little silk scarf wrapped around his neck, had on some goggles and a helmet. When I say he was ready, he was ready. When he hopped up on the Bruh Buzzard's back, and Bruh Buzzard took off, got him a good running start. Then he just let his wings out and started soaring around. When little Buzzard, he was soaring around. And after a while, Terrapin said, hey, Buzzard, I'm ready to go. Let me go solo. Buzzard said, are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. Let me go. And Buzzard turned to the side and let Terrapin slip right off his back. He started sinking down through the air. His smile got about that wide. He'd wiggle his little tail and he'd flip over one way. He'd wiggle his feet and he'd flip over the other way. Now while he was doing his somersaults, what you think he was doing? Did anybody say falling? That's what he was doing. And after a while, boom! He hit the ground. Well, when it hit the ground, Buzzard circled around and let down beside him. He said, Terrapin, buddy, is you all right? He said, no, I'm rooting for life. Look at my bag. See now, boy, I told you you couldn't learn how to fly. No, Buzzard, you taught me how to fly pretty good. You just didn't show me how to land. And that's the day, my friend, that old Terrapin found out that he couldn't learn how to fly. Thank you. Okay, when I was in Elbert County before, I'm pretty sure I told another one of my favorite stories called The Big Turnip. And I just want to paraphrase the big turnip. The man gets a turnip seed, and he goes home and he plants it. At least he digs a hole, and I usually do it with the children. And I'm doing it today too. We got this little seed, so I'm going to give everybody some seeds. Are you ready? Did everybody catch a seed? Now we got to plant that seed. We're going to go out into the backyard. And what's the first thing we got to do? We got to dig a little hole. Now let's put the seed in the hole. Now the seed is in the hole. What we got to do now? Oh, put some dirt in the hole. Okay. It's in the ground. It's covered up. What's next? Oh, we got to give it some water. Oh, it got water. What do we do next? Oh, we'll give it some sun. All right. It got earth. We got soil. We got sun. What else we need? A lot of times the children tell me we need air. Well, let's give it some air. Now, what else we need? Oh, you want to talk to it? Grow seed, grow seed, grow seed, grow. And after a little time went by, you know what happened? The seed began to sprout. And up rose this great big turnip plant with a great big turnip root. That's basically the story of the big turnip. But I didn't come to tell you that story today. I want to tell you a story called The Empty Pot from China. And in the story of the empty pot, the emperor doesn't have any children. So he needs someone to take his place when he's no longer able to be the emperor. Well, let's talk about the emperor. He's not like a president where you get elected. And it's kind of like a king, but the emperor's territory is bigger than a king's territory. But he's an unelected leader of an empire or a lot of kingdoms. So unlike the president in the United States, where we're going, well, there's a whole lot of political ads, then we cast the vote, and then they get sworn in. Not quite. But this emperor didn't have any children, and he needed someone to take his place when he was no longer able to serve as emperor. And so since he was a gardener and loved plants, he decided to give all the boys and girls a seed. And he gave them 6 months to grow a plant from that seed. And then they was to bring it back to the palace, and he would choose an emperor from amongst them, or who had the best plant. Now, a boy named Wang, he was in the crowd. He got a seed too. And Wang had a reputation of being one of the best gardeners in all the kingdoms. So he knew he was going to have a beautiful plant and may even get to be the emperor. When all the children got their seed and they went home, or back home. One got his seed and went and got him a pot. He put that seed in a pot. He covered it up with some rich soil, but he gave it water, he gave it sun, he gave it time. But you know what? Nothing grew. Now amongst the other boys and girls, their seed began to sprout and grow. But Wang's seed didn't grow. After a couple of months went by, the other children's seed was beginning to have leaves and whatnot, but Wang's seed still hadn't sprouted. So he changed the soil, or we say he repotted it, but still nothing happened. Another month went by, and still nothing happened. The other children began to tease him because nothing grew in his pot. He asked his mom and dad what was the matter, and they told him, keep doing the best you can do. When the 6 months came, and it was time to show the emperor what they had grown, but Wang had nothing in his pot. He cried because he had nothing to show the emperor. But his parents told him to take his empty pot and tell the emperor all that he had done and see what would happen. Well, the day all the boys and girls headed to the palace, you know, I should have asked, what do you think they did when they passed Wang, and Wang had a sad face and an empty pot? You know what they did. They teased and they laughed at him. Well, all of them went to the grounds of the palace, the boys and girls and their parents. They set their beautiful plants down. They stood behind them or beside them, happy because all of them had beautiful plants. And Wang only had what? An empty pot. Well, the emperor came out and walked by and looked at all the plants and smiled and nodded his head. And then he went to Wang and his empty pot. And he said, why you come with an empty pot? He said, Emperor, I took the seed you gave me. I put it in a pot. I put soil over it. I watered it, but nothing grew. I put it in another pot. I put more, even richer soil, but nothing grew. All the boys and girls began to laugh at me, but I would not give up. I changed the pots. I changed the soil, but nothing grew. And the day came when it was time to come to the palace. I told my parents I didn't want to go, but they said, you should go. Go with your pot and tell the emperor what you've done. So after he talked with Mom, the emperor looked at Mom and said, this young fella shall be emperor. All the parents and other children said, what? He doesn't even have a plant. Wang looked at the emperor and said, why? How do I get to be the emperor? And he said, because you're honest, you did your best, you're honest, and you're courageous. Huh? And the other boys and girls said, why does he get to be the emperor? And he said, you all have some beautiful plants, but I don't know how you grew them, because the seeds that I gave you had been roasted, and roasted seeds can't grow at all. This boy, he shall be emperor because he's honest, he's truthful, and he's courageous. Thank you for your beautiful plants, but I'll see you later. He threw his arms around Wang's shoulder and said, come, my friend, to take a look at your future home. And all the boys and girls that day learned a very valuable lesson. And that lesson was and is, when you do your best, be honest and courageous, you're bound. Good things are bound to happen. Thank you, Urban County. I want to close the door just like I opened it. Will you repeat after me? Stories come as stories go. Listen to the words and let them go. It matters not if the stories are true, only what they mean to you. 'Cause stories come and stories flow. Listen to the words and away we go. You may unfasten your seatbelts, and I thank you very much. I thank Ms. Burroughs once again for inviting me, and I hope to see you soon. Have a great day, evening, and life.